At the height of her success, a powerful businesswoman discovered that all the wealth in the world couldn't protect her from despair when facing the fragility of her daughter's life. In a decision made at the edge of pain, she trusted the promise of a charismatic man, only to be devastatingly betrayed. The disappearance of the girl revealed not just a network of dark crimes, but also the boundaries between unconditional love and errors driven by desperation. Transforming her guilt into strength, she embarked on a dangerous and transformative journey, proving that even in darkness, there are paths to redemption and justice. Elizabeth Anderson adjusted her impeccable black blazer as she observed New York City through the windows of her office on the 40th floor. At 42 years old, she personified success, CEO of the largest biotechnology company in the country, Life Vital Solutions, responsible for revolutionizing the national pharmaceutical market. Her trajectory was frequently highlighted in business magazines, and her face constantly appeared at international conferences. The designer watch on her wrist read 3:30 p.m. In half an hour, she would have one of the most important meetings of her career, the possible merger with a European pharmaceutical giant. But her thoughts were far away, focused on her daughter, Emily. "Ms. Anderson," the voice of Jessica, her assistant, interrupted her thoughts. "Emily's school is on line 3. Elizabeth's heart raced. It was the third call from the school that week. She took a deep breath before answering. "Elizabeth Anderson." "Ms. Anderson, this is Principal Thompson. Emily had another episode of weakness during physical education. She's in the infirmary now." Elizabeth closed her eyes, feeling the familiar weight of worry. "I'm on my way." "But Mom, you're meeting with the Europeans." "Reschedule it." The response was automatic. "My daughter is the priority." In the panoramic elevator, Elizabeth ignored the urgent messages popping up on her cell phone. Her mind went back 3 months ago when Emily's symptoms started. First, there were the unexplained purple bruises on her legs. Then, the constant fatigue, paleness, lack of appetite. The doctors initially talked about anemia, childhood stress, even anxiety. But Elizabeth knew there was something more. The driver was already waiting for her in the garage with the black Range Rover. In 15 minutes, they crossed the city to Oakwood Academy, one of the most prestigious institutions in New York. Elizabeth knew every corridor of that place, every employee. Emily had been studying there since preschool. In the infirmary, she found her little one lying on one of the beds, still in her gym uniform. Her brown hair, normally full of life, was dull and lifeless, her face paler than usual. "Mom?" Emily opened her eyes, managing a weak smile. "Sorry to bother you again." Elizabeth felt her heart tighten. She sat down next to her daughter, stroking her hair. "You never bother me, my love. How are you feeling?" "Tired, very tired." Emily closed her eyes again. "And my legs hurt." Principal Thompson approached with a folder of documents. "Ms. Anderson, we need to talk about Emily's condition. Perhaps it would be better if she took a break from physical activities until—" "That won't be necessary," Elizabeth interrupted, standing up. "Emily will have new tests done tomorrow at the best hospital in New York." In the car, with Emily sleeping in the back seat, Elizabeth made some calls. Her power and influence opened doors that would normally take months to open. For the next day, she already had appointments scheduled with the best specialists at Mount Sinai Hospital. At home, a penthouse triplex on the Upper East Side, Elizabeth put Emily to bed. She watched her daughter sleep, remembering when she was just a baby. Since her husband passed away when Emily was only 2 years old, it had always been the two of them against the world. Elizabeth had built an empire, but her true treasure was there in that bed. Her cell phone vibrated. It was an email from the European investors, not very happy with the cancellation of the meeting. Elizabeth ignored it. For the first time in her professional life, business could wait. Something in her heart told her she needed to prepare for the most important battle of her life. That night, Elizabeth couldn't sleep. She spent hours researching symptoms on the internet, consulting medical articles, seeking answers. The possibilities terrified her. When the sun rose, she was already prepared to face what was coming. But she didn't imagine that this would be just the beginning of a journey that would change her life forever. Mount Sinai Hospital gleamed under the morning sun, its glass walls reflecting the bustle of the awakening city. Elizabeth held Emily's hand firmly as they crossed the main lobby. The girl was more energetic after a night's sleep, but the deep dark circles under her little face betrayed that something wasn't right. "Mom, why so many doctors today?" Emily asked, looking at the card with the appointment schedule that Elizabeth was holding. "Because you're special, my love. We need to find out why you're so tired so we can help you get better soon." Elizabeth tried to keep her voice steady, hiding her own apprehension. The morning passed in a marathon of exams. Complete blood count, myelogram, bone marrow biopsy. Procedures that would make any adult shudder, but which Emily faced with surprising courage. Between one exam and another, she even managed to elicit smiles from the medical team with her perceptive observations about the hospital equipment. "This machine looks like a spaceship, doesn't it, Doctor?" Emily commented during one of the procedures, making the doctor smile under his mask. In the early afternoon, while Emily was resting in one of the hospital's VIP rooms, Elizabeth was called to the office of Dr. Michael Roberts, one of the country's most renowned hematologists. The doctor greeted her with a grave expression that made her stomach churn. "Ms. Anderson, the preliminary results of the exams have arrived." He paused, adjusting his glasses. "Emily has acute lymphoblastic leukemia." Elizabeth felt as if the air had been sucked out of the room. Her hands gripped the arms of the chair so tightly that her knuckles turned white. What's the next step?" Her voice came out steadier than she expected. Dr. Roberts began to explain in detail the treatment protocol. Intensive chemotherapy, possible need for bone marrow transplant, frequent hospitalizations. The treatment would be long and complex, but there was hope, a lot of hope. "With proper treatment started immediately, the chances of recovery are significant," he explained. "But we need to act quickly." Elizabeth nodded, her mind already calculating the next moves. "I want the best possible treatment, Doctor. Money is not an issue." "Ms. Anderson," the doctor leaned forward, "it's not that simple. The protocol Emily needs is extremely specific. We need special medications, some of them still in the experimental phase. Then we'll import those medications. It's not just a matter of importing. There's a whole bureaucracy involved. FDA approvals, international protocols, legal issues." Elizabeth felt frustration growing. For the first time in her life, her money and influence seemed insufficient. Upon returning to Emily's room, she found her daughter drawing. Her heart tightened when she saw the drawing. It was Elizabeth herself, dressed as a superhero, fighting invisible monsters. "Look, Mom, it's you saving everyone with your special medicines." Emily smiled, proud. Elizabeth swallowed the lump in her throat. If only it were as simple as in Emily's drawings. Her special medicines, the entire empire she had built at Life Vital seemed insignificant in the face of the challenge they now faced. That night, after putting Emily to sleep in the hospital, Elizabeth found herself alone in her improvised office in the VIP area. Her laptop open showed dozens of unread emails, including ultimatums from European investors. The merger was about to crumble due to her absence, but that seemed trivial now. As she scoured the internet for information on experimental treatments, her phone rang. It was an unknown international number. "Elizabeth Anderson," she answered, distracted. "Ms. Anderson," a male voice with a slight British accent sounded on the other end. "My name is James Sullivan. I've heard about your daughter's situation and I believe I can help." Elizabeth straightened in her chair. "How did you know about my daughter?" "I have contacts at the hospital. Ms. Anderson, I represent an international organization specializing in cases like Emily's, cases that require unconventional solutions." His words lit a small flame of hope in Elizabeth's chest, but years of business experience made her remain cautious. "Go on," she said, picking up a pen to take notes. "We can provide immediate access to the most advanced treatments available globally. No bureaucracy, no waiting, but we need to talk in person. Some matters are too delicate to be discussed over the phone." Elizabeth hesitated. Something in her business intuition sounded an alarm, but Emily's sleeping. Face in the next room weighed more than any apprehension. "Where can we meet?" The Four Seasons restaurant was practically empty at that hour of the morning. Elizabeth had purposely chosen a time between breakfast and lunch for the meeting with James Sullivan. Emily was at the hospital, under the care of Jessica, her trusted assistant, undergoing more tests. At 10 a.m. sharp, a tall and elegant man crossed the room towards her. He wore an impeccably cut navy blue suit, and his graying hair at the temples gave him an air of distinction. His smile was warm, but his eyes remained cold, calculating. "Ms. Anderson," he extended his hand, "it's a pleasure to finally meet. You in person." Elizabeth indicated the chair in front of her, studying him carefully. Years of tough negotiations had taught her to read people, and something about James Sullivan intrigued her deeply. "Mr. Sullivan, I appreciate your punctuality, but I would appreciate it even more if you got straight to the point. My daughter is waiting for me at the hospital." Sullivan smiled, taking a folder from his briefcase. Of course, time is precious, especially in your case." He slid some documents across the table. "As I mentioned, I represent an international organization that specializes in complex cases." Elizabeth examined the papers. They were detailed reports on experimental treatments, promising results, impressive recovery statistics. "Our organization, Global Health Solutions, operates in a gray area of modern medicine," Sullivan continued. "We have access to treatments that haven't yet been approved through conventional channels, but have already proven their effectiveness in cases similar to Emily's." "Why not seek approval through traditional means?" Elizabeth questioned, her voice laden with skepticism. "Bureaucracy, politics, financial interests. You, as a CEO, must understand better than anyone how frustrating the system can be." He paused, leaning forward. "While conventional protocols debate for months or years, patients need immediate solutions." Elizabeth leafed through more documents, her heart racing as she saw the results presented. The success rates were impressive, almost too good to be true. "What's the cost?" Sullivan smiled again. "Money isn't the problem, Ms. Anderson. In fact, we're willing to bear all the costs of the treatment." Elizabeth raised an eyebrow. "And what's the catch?" "Perceptive as always," he complimented. "In exchange, we want two things. First, total confidentiality about our methods and procedures. Second, and more importantly, we need you to use your influence to facilitate some regulatory approvals for our products in the United States." Elizabeth's stomach tightened. As CEO of Life Vital, she had considerable influence over the regulatory bodies in the pharmaceutical sector. "Are you asking me to compromise my professional position?" "I'm offering a fair exchange," Sullivan responded smoothly. "Your influence for a real chance of cure for Emily. Besides, think of the other children who could benefit when these treatments become available on the market." Elizabeth picked up her coffee, now cold, more to buy time to think than out of any desire to drink. Her mind was in turmoil. As a businesswoman, she knew that this proposal was ethically questionable. As a mother, however, "I need more information," she finally said. "I want to see your facilities, meet your medical team, understand exactly what the treatment would be." Naturally, Sullivan took a business card from his pocket. "We can arrange a visit to our facilities in Switzerland next week, all with the utmost discretion, obviously." Elizabeth took the card, feeling its weight between her fingers. It was elegant, minimalist, with just a phone number and the initials. "JS? And how long would Emily need to be hospitalized?" "The initial treatment takes about 3 months. You could accompany her, of course. We have exclusive accommodations for family members." At that moment, Elizabeth's cell phone vibrated. It was a message from Jessica. "Emily is asking for you. She's not feeling very well." "I need to go." Elizabeth stood up abruptly. "I'll think about your proposal." "Time is not on your side, Ms. Anderson," Sullivan warned, also standing up. "Our offer is only valid for 48 hours. On the way back to the hospital, Elizabeth couldn't stop thinking about the conversation. Something about Sullivan's proposal sounded too artificial, too controlled. But when she entered the room and saw Emily, paler than normal, connected to monitors and IVs, she felt her resolve waver. "Mom!" Emily smiled weakly. "Where were you?" "Look what I drew." She showed a new drawing, a landscape with snow-covered mountains. "It's Switzerland. The nurse told me they have the best chocolates in the world there. Can we go someday?" Elizabeth felt a chill run down her spine. How did Emily know about Switzerland? Was it coincidence or... Sitting next to her daughter, Elizabeth kissed her forehead. "Of course we can, my love, of course we can." Her right hand clutched Sullivan's card in her blazer pocket, while her mind waged a battle between professional ethics and maternal desperation. The clock on the wall seemed louder than normal, marking not just the hours, but the time that was running out for her decision. The next 48 hours were the longest of Elizabeth's life. Every minute seemed to drag on as she tried to make the most important decision of her life. In the hospital room, she watched Emily sleeping, her sleep now more restless due to the side effects of the first conventional chemotherapy session. During this period, Elizabeth did what she knew best: investigate. Using her international contacts and Life Vital's efficient corporate intelligence team, she sought all possible information about Global Health Solutions and James Sullivan. "Ms. Anderson," Jessica entered the room quietly, carrying a folder. "I got the information you asked for." Elizabeth left a soft kiss on Emily's forehead and followed her assistant into the hallway. The findings were intriguing. Global Health Solutions had officially existed for only 3 years, but had already established a significant presence in countries like Switzerland, Singapore, and the United Arab Emirates. Their facilities were impressive but curiously closed to the public. "The most interesting thing," Jessica continued, "is that they seem to have an extraordinary success rate in cases considered difficult, but they don't publish their methods in any respectable scientific journal." Elizabeth frowned. "And about Sullivan?" "Oxford graduate, PhD in biotechnology. Worked for the world's largest pharmaceutical companies before disappearing from the radar for 5 years. Reappeared as the spokesperson for Global Health Solutions." At that moment, Elizabeth's cell phone vibrated. It was a message from Sullivan. "Time is running out. Decision?" Elizabeth looked at the room where Emily was sleeping. The heart monitor emitted its regular beeps, like a metronome marking the time slipping through her fingers. It was then that she noticed Dr. Roberts, the hematologist, coming towards her with a worried expression. "Ms. Anderson, we need to talk about the latest results." In the meeting room of the VIP wing, the doctor explained that Emily's condition was evolving more rapidly than expected, and not in a positive way. The conventional treatment wasn't having the desired effect. "There are other options we could try," he explained, "but it would take weeks, maybe months, to get the necessary approvals." Back in Emily's room, Elizabeth found her daughter awake, trying to braid her favorite doll's hair. Her small fingers trembled with the effort. "Mum, why's my hair falling out?" Emily asked, showing the strands that had been left in her hand. Elizabeth sat down next to her daughter, helping her with the doll's braid. "It's because of the strong medicine you're taking, my love, but it will grow back, even more beautiful. Like Rapunzel's." "Even more beautiful than Rapunzel's." Elizabeth smiled, fighting back tears. That night, after Emily finally fell asleep, Elizabeth received another mysterious email. It was a video of an apparently healthy girl running and playing in a snow-covered garden. According to the message, the child had been diagnosed with the same condition as Emily 6 months ago and was now completely recovered thanks to the treatment from Global Health Solutions. Elizabeth spent hours verifying the authenticity of the video, even using experts in digital forensic analysis. Everything indicated it was genuine. At 3 a.m., her phone rang. It was Sullivan. "Have you decided, Ms. Anderson?" Elizabeth watched Emily through the room window. "I want to see your facilities first." "Excellent decision. A private jet will be waiting for you tomorrow at 10 a.m. Bring Emily." "I'm not taking my daughter without being absolutely sure." "Ms. Anderson," Sullivan interrupted softly, "time is crucial here. If you want our help, you'll need to trust our process completely." Elizabeth felt a chill run down her spine. Years of business experience had taught her never to trust anyone blindly. But what choice did she have? The next morning, Jessica entered the room with another disturbing discovery. She had found reports of families who had also been contacted by Global Health Solutions, but who had mysteriously disappeared afterwards. "Ms. Anderson, this doesn't seem right," Jessica warned, genuinely concerned. Elizabeth looked at the clock. 9:15 a.m. Sullivan's jet would be waiting in less than an hour. Emily was being prepared for temporary discharge, excited about the idea of a snow adventure, as she called it. It was then that her phone rang again. It was Dr. Roberts' number, but when she answered, an unknown female voice spoke. "Ms. Anderson." "Don't go, I know what they do. My daughter—" The call abruptly dropped. Elizabeth tried to call back, but the number wouldn't connect anymore. The clock read 9:30 a.m. A nurse entered with Emily's discharge papers. The girl was already in a wheelchair, smiling despite her paleness, holding her braided doll. "Mum, are we going to see the snow?" Elizabeth looked at her daughter, at the papers in her hands, and at the silent phone. The time for decision was running out, and every choice seemed fraught with immeasurable risks. The private jet was luxurious, but Elizabeth barely noticed the sophisticated details of the aircraft. Her mind was focused on Emily, who was sleeping peacefully in the reclining seat, and on the decision she had made. After the mysterious call, she had implemented her own plan. Before boarding, Elizabeth had activated her most trusted network of contacts. Jessica was with a team monitoring every movement of the flight. Marcus, her head of security at Life Vital, had discreetly assigned 2 ex-federal agents to follow them at a distance. And most importantly, she carried with her an ultra-sophisticated tracking device developed by Life Vital's own research department. "Ms. Anderson," the flight attendant approached with a tablet. "Mr. Sullivan requests that you review some documents before landing." Elizabeth took the tablet, finding a series of contracts and confidentiality terms. As she read, she noticed something peculiar. Small inconsistencies in the documents, details that only someone with her experience in international contracts would notice. "Excuse me," she called the flight attendant again. "Where exactly are we landing?" "At our private clinic in the Swiss Alps, ma'am." "What's the name of the nearest city?" The flight attendant hesitated for a fraction of a second. "I'm afraid I'm not authorized to disclose that information before the documents are signed." Elizabeth felt her stomach churn. Something was definitely wrong. Discreetly, she sent a coded message to Jessica through her special cell phone, which worked even. In airplane mode, Emily woke up, rubbing her eyes. "Have we reached the snow yet, Mom?" "Almost, my love." Elizabeth smiled, stroking her daughter's hair. "Are you hungry?" "A little bit." Elizabeth called the flight attendant and asked for something light for Emily to eat. While they waited, her daughter looked out the window, enchanted by the carpet of clouds below them. "Mom, look, it looks like cotton candy." At that moment, the tablet in her lap vibrated. It was a message from Sullivan. "I hope the documents are in order. We need your signature before landing." Elizabeth started typing a response when her special cell phone vibrated. It was a message from Jessica. "Urgent. We've discovered something. Global Health Solutions doesn't exist in official Swiss records. The address provided is of an abandoned old sanatorium." Elizabeth's blood ran cold. She looked at Emily, who was absent-mindedly nibbling on a cookie, oblivious to the growing tension. "Excuse me," Elizabeth called the flight attendant once more. "Where's the restroom?" In the small airplane bathroom, Elizabeth tried to keep calm while quickly typing another message to Jessica. It was then that she noticed something strange in the mirror. A small camera, almost imperceptible, in the upper corner. They were being watched. Back in her seat, Elizabeth realized that the plane had begun its descent. Through the window, she saw no sign of civilization, only snow-covered mountains. "Miss Anderson," the flight attendant appeared again. "I must insist on the documents. It's a security protocol." Elizabeth smiled calmly, years of tough negotiations giving her the ability to maintain composure. "Of course, I just need to do one. Last review." Her cell phone vibrated once more. Another message from Jessica. "We've managed to identify the woman who tried to warn you. Anna Lewis, American scientist. Her daughter was treated by Global Health Solutions 6 months ago. No one has seen them since." Elizabeth felt the air leave her lungs. She looked at Emily, who was calmly drawing in her little notebook, and made a decision. "I'm sorry, but I'm feeling ill," she said to the flight attendant. "I think it was something I ate. Would you like some medicine, Mom? We have a well-equipped pharmacy on board." "No," Elizabeth responded, perhaps too quickly. "I just need I need us to go back. Emily isn't feeling well either, are you, sweetie?" Emily looked at her mother, confused. Elizabeth silently prayed that her daughter, always so perceptive, would understand the cue. It's true," Emily responded, although her face showed she hadn't quite understood what was happening. "My tummy hurts a little bit." The flight attendant smiled, but her eyes remained cold. "I'm sorry, Ms. Anderson, but we've already started. The landing procedure. We can't return now." Elizabeth felt panic growing but kept her voice firm. "I insist. I'm responsible for my daughter's health and—" "Ms. Anderson," a male voice sounded over the plane's sound system. It was Sullivan. "Perhaps it's better if we talk in person. I'm waiting for you on the runway." The plane continued descending, and through the window Elizabeth could now see a small landing strip between the mountains. Next to it, a complex of buildings that looked like something out of a science fiction movie. Her cell phone vibrated. One last time. Jessica's message was short and alarming. "Clandestine research laboratory, unauthorized experiments. We've alerted international authorities. Keep them distracted." Elizabeth hugged Emily, who now seemed worried by her mother's evident tension. She needed to think fast, very fast. The plane was about to land, and she knew that the next decision she made could change their lives forever. The plane landed smoothly on the snow-covered runway. Elizabeth kept Emily close to her brain working furiously to devise a plan. Through the window, she could see a welcoming committee waiting, doctors in white coats, nurses, and in the center, James Sullivan, his artificial smile wider than ever. "Mom?" Emily whispered. "Why are you so nervous?" Elizabeth kissed the top of her daughter's head. "Remember when we played that detective game, where we had to discover secrets?" Emily nodded, her eyes shining with understanding. Since she was little, she and her mother had turned difficult situations into imagination games. "Now we're on a secret mission," Elizabeth continued, keeping her voice low. "We need to be very smart and observant, like real investigators." The plane door opened, and the icy air of the Alps invaded the cabin. Elizabeth adjusted Emily's coat and held her hand firmly as they descended the stairs. "Welcome to our research center." Sullivan opened his arms in a theatrical gesture. "As you can see, our facilities are state-of-the-art." Elizabeth observed the complex. It was impressive, a series of ultra-modern buildings with glass and steel walls, dramatically contrasting with the snow-covered mountains in the background. But there was something artificial about it all, like a very well-constructed set. "We'd like to start the procedures immediately," a doctor approached, extending her hand towards Emily. "I'll take the little one for some preliminary exams." "No," Elizabeth was firm. "Emily doesn't leave my side until I know all the facilities and understand exactly each procedure." Sullivan frowned slightly, but maintained his smile. "Ms. Anderson, as we discussed, our protocols are quite specific." "So are mine," Elizabeth interrupted. Her years as CEO had given her the ability to emanate authority when necessary. "Either we do it my way, or we go back right now." A tense silence settled. Sullivan exchanged glances with the medical team before yielding. "As you wish. Please follow me." The tour of the facilities was impressive at first glance. State-of-the-art laboratories, advanced medical equipment, impeccable treatment rooms. But Elizabeth, with her trained eye for details, began to notice inconsistencies. The labels on the equipment seemed too recent. Some monitors displayed data. That made no medical sense, and more disturbingly, certain areas remained rigidly closed, with Sullivan changing the subject when questioned about them. "And here," Sullivan opened the door to a specially equipped room, "is where we perform our most innovative treatments." Elizabeth examined the environment, her heart racing as she noticed small, revealing details, scratch marks near the gurneys, cameras at strategic angles, electronic locks on the doors. "Amazing, isn't it, Emily?" Elizabeth commented, discreetly squeezing her daughter's hand, the signal they had agreed upon. "How about we show Dr. Sullivan that magic trick you learned?" Emily's eyes lit up with understanding. Since she was little, they had codes and signals, games that were actually security strategies Elizabeth had developed after years of maternal concern. Emily took her small tablet from her backpack, a special gift from Elizabeth, equipped with an independent tracking and communication system. Look, doctor. She began to fiddle with the device, apparently showing a game, but actually activating the emergency protocol that Elizabeth had installed. Sullivan approached, interested. Impressive. You're a very smart girl, Emily. It was at this moment that Elizabeth noticed something even more disturbing. Through a half-open door, she saw a room with several computer screens. On one of them, she recognized the face of Anna Lewis, the missing scientist. Emily is tired, Elizabeth declared abruptly. We need to rest a bit before any procedure. But Ms. Anderson, Sullivan argued, time is crucial. Exactly why I need to be absolutely sure of every detail. Elizabeth kept her voice firm. We'll stay at a hotel in the nearest town and return tomorrow to start the procedures. Sullivan's smile faltered for the first time. I'm afraid that's not possible. Our security protocols are illegal, Elizabeth completed, her voice sharp as steel, just like your unauthorized research. The silence that followed was deafening. Sullivan stared at her, his mask of cordiality finally falling. How? I'm the CEO of the largest biotechnology company in the United States, Mr. Sullivan. Did you really think I'd come here without doing a thorough investigation? At that moment, her special cell phone vibrated. Jessica's message was clear. International security teams on the way. 15 minutes. Sullivan also received some kind of alert as his face changed. Wrong choice, Ms. Anderson. He signaled to the medical team. Start the procedures, now. Elizabeth pulled Emily back, placing herself between her daughter and the approaching team. Her heart was racing, but her voice remained calm. You also made a wrong choice, Mr. Sullivan. You underestimated the power of a mother. The next moments seemed to unfold in slow motion. Elizabeth kept Emily firmly protected behind her, while her mind worked at maximum speed. Years of experience in corporate crisis management had taught her that sometimes the best defense is a good offense. Before you make another mistake, Mr. Sullivan, Elizabeth spoke with calculated calm, perhaps you'd like to know that at this moment, your organization is being exposed in real time. Sullivan gestured for his team to stop. What are you talking about? Every second since we landed is being transmitted live to my security team. Elizabeth allowed a small smile to form on her lips. Emily's tablet isn't just a toy. It's a transmission device developed by Life Vital. Emily, understanding her role in the plan, held the tablet so that the built-in cameras captured the entire environment. The girl, despite the visible fear in her eyes, remained firm, demonstrating impressive courage. Impossible, Sullivan retorted, but his voice betrayed uncertainty. Our facilities have signal blockers. Really? Elizabeth arched an eyebrow. Then how do you explain that Anna Lewis managed to send that warning message? By the way, where is she now? The mention of the scientist's name caused a visible reaction in some members of the medical team. One of the nurses exchanged nervous glances with another, and one of the doctors took a step back. Anna Lewis made her own choices, Sullivan responded coldly. Just as you are making yours now. The difference, Elizabeth continued, taking a step forward, is that I made my choices with all the necessary information. I know about the unauthorized experiments, about the patients who disappeared, about the falsified data. Sullivan paled slightly. You're bluffing. I've been CEO of the largest biotechnology company in the United States for over a decade. Do you really think I wouldn't recognize manipulated data? That I wouldn't notice the inconsistencies in your reports? At that moment, an alarm began to sound in the complex. Sullivan quickly checked his phone and his expression changed. Last chance, Ms. Anderson, he said, his voice now laden with threat. The treatment we offer is real. It can really save your daughter. All we ask in return is your cooperation. And silence. Elizabeth felt Emily squeeze her hand. She looked down and met her daughter's eyes, eyes full of unconditional trust and love. Do you know what your biggest mistake was, Mr. Sullivan? Elizabeth asked, her voice echoing through the room. It wasn't underestimating my intelligence or my resources. It was not understanding that a mother would never put her daughter at risk for false promises. But what about her illness? Sullivan tried one last card. Without our treatment, There is a legitimate treatment, Elizabeth interrupted him. One that was being developed by Anna Lewis herself, before you recruited. Huh. And now, thanks to the information we've collected here, we'll be able to continue it within the law. The sound of helicopters began to echo from outside. Sullivan ran to the window and saw several aircraft approaching, his features contorted into a mask of anger. You don't understand, he said, his composure finally crumbling. What we do here is revolutionary. The rules, the laws, the ethical protocols, they're just obstacles to progress. No, Elizabeth responded firmly. They are necessary protections to prevent people like you from turning others' desperation into profit. The doors of the room suddenly opened. Jessica entered, accompanied by Interpol agents and a woman Elizabeth recognized from the photos, Anna Lewis. It's over, Sullivan, Anna Lewis declared, her voice laden with emotion. All evidence of the illegal experiments has been recovered. Sullivan looked around like a cornered animal. His team, realizing the situation, began to distance themselves from him. Ms. Anderson, Anna Lewis approached Elizabeth and Emily. Thank you for being brave enough to do what I couldn't at first. Emily, still holding her tablet, looked at the scientist with curiosity. Can you help me get better? Anna Lewis knelt, down to be at the girl's height. Yes, dear, but we're going to do it the right way with all the care you deserve. As the agents led Sullivan and his main collaborators away, Elizabeth hugged Emily tightly. Silent tears ran down her face. Not of fear or sadness, but of relief and hope. Mom, Emily whispered, did we win the game? Elizabeth smiled through the tears. Yes, my love, we won. And now we're going to start a new phase, an even more important one. Jessica approached with news from Life Vital's legal team. Anna Lewis's legitimate laboratory would be reactivated, now with all the support and structure necessary to develop the treatment ethically and safely. As they left the complex, snow began to fall softly outside. Emily extended her hand to feel the flakes, her eyes shining with a mixture of innocence and hope that only children possess. You know, Mom, she said thoughtfully, I think we don't need to play detective anymore. Now we can just play at being happy. Elizabeth kissed her daughter's forehead, knowing that the real battle, the fight for Emily's health, was just beginning. But now they would face this journey the right way, with love, courage, and honesty. 2 weeks after the events in the Alps, the scenario couldn't be more different. Elizabeth observed through the window of the newly inaugurated Life Vital Advanced Research Center, where Emily was starting her new treatment. The place was bright and welcoming, with walls in soft tones and a medical team genuinely committed to the well-being of the patients. Anna Lewis, now director of the research center, had become not just a professional ally, but a close friend. Her story was a testimony to perseverance. After discovering Sullivan's true intentions, she had managed to escape with crucial data from her legitimate research, but had to hide for months. The treatment we've developed is promising, Anna explained as they walked down the corridor towards the main laboratory. We've combined gene therapy with advanced immunotherapy, all within the most rigorous ethical protocols. Elizabeth listened attentively, still adapting to the new reality. Life Vital had undergone a complete restructuring in the past few weeks. The board of directors, impressed by her courage and integrity, not only supported the creation of the new research center, but also approved a revolutionary program for ethical access to experimental treatments. Mom, look! Emily's animated voice came from one of the treatment rooms. She was sitting in a comfortable armchair surrounded by state-of-the-art equipment, but what caught attention was her radiant smile as she showed a drawing she had just made. It's our hospital family, Emily explained proudly. On the paper there were several figures, Emily herself, Elizabeth, Anna Lewis, the medical team, and even other children in treatment, all united in a large circle. It's beautiful, my love, Elizabeth smiled, sitting next to her daughter. How are you feeling today? Better, Emily responded with enthusiasm. Dr. Anna said my numbers are improving, whatever that means. Anna, Lewis smiled, picking up a clipboard with the latest results. Emily is responding extraordinarily well to the treatment. The stem cells we isolated are developing exactly as we hoped. Elizabeth felt tears of relief form in her eyes. but she held them back. She had learned to keep hope balanced with caution. And the side effects? Minimal compared to conventional treatments, Anna explained. Our personalized approach allows... She was interrupted by a small commotion in the hallway. Jessica entered hurriedly into the room holding her tablet. Ms. Anderson, you need to see this. On the screen, a live news report showed global health. Solutions headquarters being officially shut down by international authorities. But what caught Elizabeth's attention was the number of families that were beginning to come forward, telling their own experiences with Sullivan's organization. We're not alone anymore, Elizabeth murmured, squeezing Emily's hand. And that's why we need you, Anna said softly. Other families need to know that there's real hope, ethical treatments, people committed to true healing. Emily, who was drawing another picture, looked up. Can we help other children, Mum? Like the story of that girl you told me about, the one with the little bottle they threw into the sea and saved a lot of people? Elizabeth smiled, remembering the story she used to tell Emily about the message in a bottle that, when found, ended up saving an entire fishing village. Yes, my love, that's exactly what we're going to do. At that moment, Jessica received another notification. The first results of the audits on other suspected clinics have started to come in, and she hesitated, looking at Emily. You can speak, Elizabeth nodded. We don't have any more secrets in this family. Several families are seeking help. Some are already on their way to New York. The board suggests transforming the entire third floor into a pediatric wing. Elizabeth exchanged glances with Anna Lewis, who was already making mental calculations. We're going to need more staff, more equipment, and more drawings, Emily completed, already separating her colored markers. Each child needs to have a special drawing in their room, right, Mum? Elizabeth felt her heart expand with pride and love. Her daughter, even facing her own battle, was already thinking about how to help others. It was a lesson in humanity that not even the greatest academic titles or business successes could teach. Jessica, Elizabeth called her assistant, schedule an extraordinary board meeting for tomorrow. We're going to present a new project, the Emily program. The Emily program? Anna Lewis asked, interested. A comprehensive support program for families in situations similar to ours. Not just medical treatment, but psychological support, social assistance, continuing education, Elizabeth explained, her ideas flowing rapidly. We'll transform our experience into something bigger than ourselves. Emily, who had finished another drawing, held it up for everyone to see. It was a large sun rising between mountains, with the phrase, "Hope begins here," written in her childish handwriting. Perfect for the entrance of the new center, Anna smiled, already imagining where the drawing would look best. Elizabeth hugged Emily, feeling her small body growing stronger each day. The path was still long, but now it was illuminated not only by the hope of a cure, but by the possibility of transforming their story into a beacon for others who, like them, needed to find their way back home. 6 months had passed since the inauguration of the Emily program. The third floor of Life Vital's Advanced Research Center had transformed into a vibrant and welcoming space where hope and science walked hand in hand. The walls, once white and impersonal, now displayed a growing collection of drawings, all signed by Emily and her new friends. Elizabeth walked through the corridors, observing the changes that had occurred not only in the physical space, but mainly in the lives being transformed. In each room, a different story was unfolding. In room 304, Maria, a 10-year-old girl from California, was already showing clear signs of improvement after 3 months of treatment. In room 308, Peter, 7 years old, had just received his first positive results. Ms. Anderson, a familiar voice called out to her. It was Mrs. Johnson, Peter's mother, running towards her with tears in her eyes. His exams... Elizabeth hugged her, already knowing from the smile on her face that it was good news. Mrs. Johnson was one of the first mothers welcomed by the program after Emily's story became public. He's responding to the treatment, Mrs. Johnson sobbed, with joy. Dr. Anna said the markers are almost normal. At the end of the corridor, Emily emerged from her own treatment session, more rosy-cheeked and energetic than ever. Her hair, which had started to grow back, now formed small curls that she decorated with colorful bows. "Mom, Mom!" Emily ran towards her, holding a folder full of papers. "I finished the drawings for the new children's wing. Dr. Anna said we can start decorating next week." Elizabeth smiled, taking the folder. The new children's wing was a special project, an expansion of the program to receive more children. Life Vitals Board, impressed with the results obtained, had not only approved the expansion, but made the Emily program a corporate priority. "Emily!" Peter shouted from his door, waving excitedly. "Come see what I drew too!" Emily looked at her, mother asking permission with her eyes. Elizabeth nodded, and the girl ran to her friend's room. It was impressive how her daughter had become a kind of beacon of hope for the other children. Her energy and optimism were contagious. "The results are impressive," Anna Lewis commented, approaching with a stack of reports. "Not just the recovery rates, but the positive psychological impact of the program as a whole." Elizabeth took the reports, analyzing the numbers. The Emily program had served more than 50 families in its first 6 months, with a positive response rate to treatment that exceeded all expectations. "The most important thing," Anna continued, "is that we're managing to do all this within the most rigorous ethical standards. Every advance, every discovery is documented and shared with the scientific community." "And Sullivan?" Elizabeth asked, although she already knew the answer. "His trial started last week. Several former collaborators are testifying, but the most significant thing is that his arrest led to the dismantling of other similar organizations around the world." At that moment, Jessica appeared with more news. "Ms. Anderson, the World Health Organization wants to include the Emily program as a reference model in humanized pediatric treatments." Elizabeth felt her heart swell with pride, not for the achievement itself, but for the greater meaning it carried. What began as a personal struggle had transformed into a light of hope for families around the world. "Mom!" Emily called from Peter's room. "Come see! We had an amazing idea!" Elizabeth found Emily and Peter sitting on the floor, surrounded by drawings. They had created a kind of comic book about superheroes fighting diseases. "We can make a magazine," Emily explained enthusiastically, "for all the children who come here so they won't be afraid of the treatment. And each child can create their own superhero," Peter completed, showing his character. A boy with magical powers who transformed medicines into candies. Elizabeth sat down with them, marveling at the children's ability to transform their difficult experiences into something positive and inspiring. Anna Lewis and Jessica joined them, already making plans to turn the idea into reality. At the end of that afternoon, as she watched the sunset through the hospital window, Elizabeth reflected on how life could change in such a short time. The despair she had felt months ago had transformed into determination, and that determination had generated much more than just Emily's cure. It had created a movement of hope and transformation. "What are you thinking about, Mom?" Emily asked, resting her head on her shoulder. "About how you taught me to be a better person," Elizabeth replied, kissing the top of her daughter's head. "About how sometimes our greatest difficulties can turn into our greatest blessings." Emily smiled, that smile that had illuminated so many difficult days. "You know what Dr. Anna told me today? That sometimes we need to go through hard things to be able to help other people later, like a special mission." Elizabeth hugged her daughter, feeling tears of gratitude form in her eyes. Outside, the sky was tinged pink and gold, announcing the end of another day of battles and victories in the Emily program. A day that, for many families, represented a new beginning. 1 year had passed since the beginning of the Emily program. Life Vitals Advanced Research Center was preparing for a special celebration, the graduation of the first class of superheroes, as the children affectionately called the completion of their treatments. The auditorium was decorated with the drawings that had become the program's trademark. The comic book, idealized by Emily and Peter, had transformed into a complete series, translated into several languages and distributed in hospitals around the world. Elizabeth adjusted Emily's dress in front of the mirror. Her daughter, now 9 years old, was radiant. The exams from the last week had confirmed she was completely cured. "Are you nervous, my love?" Elizabeth asked, fixing the bow in her daughter's hair, now longer and shinier than ever. "A little bit," Emily admitted, "but it's a good nervous, like that butterfly feeling in your tummy when you're too happy." The graduation event wouldn't be an ordinary ceremony. It had transformed into an international symposium on humanized treatments in pediatric oncology. Doctors, researchers, and families from various countries had arrived to witness the results of the Emily program. Anna Lewis, now globally recognized for her research, was backstage with Peter, Maria, and the other children preparing for their big presentation. "Remember," she was saying, "you are much more than patients. You are pioneers. You are examples of courage and hope." In the front row of the auditorium, Elizabeth recognized familiar faces. Mrs. Johnson, now coordinator of the family support group, Jessica, who had become executive director of the program, and even some of the doctors who had attended Emily at the beginning of her journey. The event began with a video documenting the program's history. The images showed the before and after, from moments of uncertainty to the first achievements, from tears of concern to smiles of victory. When it came time for the presentations, Emily took the stage with confidence. Her speech, written by herself, moved everyone. "When I got sick, I thought my story was over, but I discovered it was just the beginning. I learned that sometimes we need to be strong not just for ourselves, but for everyone who comes after us. Every drawing I made, every friend I met here, every smile we exchanged, all of this is part of a story bigger than mine, bigger than all of us." The other children joined her on stage, each sharing a piece of their journey. Peter showed how his drawings had evolved from shaky scribbles to illustrations full of life. Maria sang a song she had composed during her treatment. In the audience, there wasn't a dry eye. Elizabeth watched it all with her heart overflowing with emotion. She remembered the despair she had felt a year ago, the moment she had almost taken the wrong path, guided by fear. Anna Lewis took the stage to present the program's latest results. More than 200 families served, a success rate that surpassed the best world centers, and most importantly, a treatment model that was being replicated in several countries. "The Emily program taught us that healing goes far beyond medicine," Anna explained. "It's about creating an environment where hope flourishes, where every small victory is celebrated, where no one needs to fight alone." Elizabeth was called to make the closing remarks. As she climbed onto the stage, she was surprised by Emily, who ran to hug her. "A year ago," Elizabeth began with her daughter by her side, "I was a CEO who believed that power and money could solve any problem. I was wrong. What really transforms lives is love, ethics, and the determination to make a difference." She continued, her voice laden with emotion. "The Emily program is not just a treatment center. It's proof that we can transform our greatest pains into a source of hope for others. Every child who passes through here is not just a patient, they're a hero who teaches us about courage, resilience, and love." The event ended with a surprise organized by the children, a musical performance where each one represented a different superhero, fighting against villains that symbolized their diseases. The message was clear. With love, science, and solidarity, any battle can be won. After the ceremony, as families celebrated in the center's garden, Elizabeth found Emily sitting in her favorite spot, a bench under a large tree from where she could see the sunset. "What are you thinking about, my love?" Emily smiled, that smile that had illuminated so many difficult days. "I'm thinking about all the other children who will still come here. I want them to know they're not alone." Elizabeth hugged her daughter, feeling immense gratitude for the path they had traveled. The Emily program had become much more than a treatment center. It was a beacon of hope, a testimony to the transformative power of love and determination. "You know, Mom," Emily said, watching the sky turn pink and golden, "I think I discovered what the real superpower is." "And what is it?" "It's believing. Believing that we can change things, that we can help people, that after the storm always comes the sun." Elizabeth kissed the top of her daughter's head, marveling at her wisdom. On the horizon, the sun was setting, but it wasn't an end. It was just the beginning of a new chapter, of new stories of hope and transformation that would continue to be written in the Emily program.